you feeling?
Not too good, honey.
Not too good. Was there a specific moment that changed your life significantly that you can remember? A full-on turn of the page?
I think when I met Don, when I met your grandpa.
Can you tell me your full name?
Margaret, my maiden name.
Do both.
Margaret Agnes Rawl Goza Echtler.
That's a lot of names.
Well, my maiden name is Rawl. My last name.
How do you spell that?
R-A-L-L.
Where did that come from?
My father's side of the family, and I'm all German.
All
yeah.
German.
Yeah, both sides, honey.
Your current age, how old are you currently?
91.
91.
Yeah.
And your birthday is in May?
Pardon me?
Birthday's in May?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What year were you born?
May 1631.
1931. Mm-hmm. That was coming right off the end of the Great Depression, correct?
Yeah, I was born during the Depression, hon.
Born during it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Where were you born?
Carrickon, Southside Hospital.
Was that the thing back then, to have really large families?
Yeah, my grandmother had 15. My dad's mother had 15. Yeah.
Christmases must have been crazy.
Yeah, and she had a lot of boys too. I think she had I knew 8 of them and 3 aunts, but some of them had passed away that I didn't even know, honey. But yeah, I knew a lot of them. Yeah.
And your parents were born in the United States?
Yeah. My grandma wasn't. My dad's mother was born in Germany.
And what about your
mother's
father?
My mother's family was born in the United States.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
I can name some of them.
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see. My dad was the oldest one living. So Edward, Howard, Con, Gilbert, James, Larry, and then there was my Aunt Rosella, Aunt Clara, and Aunt, what the heck was her name? Eloise, yeah. Well, Grandma Rawl, she worked till she was 82. I guess after all her children were raised. My grandpa, he was born, had a glass eye and a wooden leg. I don't know whether he was in the service or what.
Is he a pirate?
Yeah.
Sounds like a pirate.
Yeah, but yeah, she worked for a Dr. Baroni in Oakland till she was 82. And then she had a stroke, and she ended up coming living with me and my dad. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How old was she when she died?
95. Yeah.
Old age runs in the family.
Yeah. Not really. They lived in an apartment. It was near Southside, but it was called the Arlington Apartments near Southside. On the south, you know where Southside is, honey?
Yeah.
Well, Arlington Heights was like up on an upper level from Southside, and they lived in an apartment up there. My mother, she had 3 boys and I think 5 girls. My mother, yeah.
3 boys, 5 girls.
Yeah, but her mother was stone blind. She was born blind, but
Hey.
you should have seen her home, honey. It was beautiful. It was spotless. I don't know how she ever did it, but she was stone blind. But she could touch your face and tell you what you look like. My father and mother would dress us kids up we had to go and see my dad's mother and dad every Sunday before we even went to church. We'd leave my grandma's house, go to my other grandma's house, my mother's family. We'd go see grandma. But that was a ritual every Sunday. Our grandparents were the main things in our life. And that this had to be done. But then once my mom passed away, then my dad couldn't do it anymore, you know. But yeah, that was the main thing in life is grandparents. It seems like everybody, children had to see their grandparents on the weekends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have 11 brothers and 3 sisters.
All from the same parents.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
15 kids?
Yeah, 15, yeah. Yeah.
And where were you inside of that 15?
7. I was
You're
7.
in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, there were 7 older and 7 younger. Yeah.
You said 11 brothers?
Yeah.
Was it brothers?
Yeah, 11 boys and 3 girls, 4 girls.
How many of them are still living?
Pardon me?
How many of them are still living?
All but me and my youngest brother. Yeah.
That's it?
Yeah. Oh, they're all deceased, hon. Yeah. Yeah, I'm the oldest living of all of them. The house we lived in was little. I don't know how 15 of us ever lived in that house. My oldest brother was William, Howard, Edward, Raymond, Dolores. Let's see now, Dolores, Georgie, Joe, Jimmy, myself. And there was Tommy, Paul, Laverne and Lawrencey, they were twins. Rita and Reggie, they were twins. My brother, my second oldest brother, he died when he was 5 years old from pneumonia. Yeah, back in those days it was hard, honey, because they had no control over pneumonia. My dad was born in 1892. I know that. So I guess my mom, she was 2 years older, so she was probably born in 1894, honey.
Your parents' names?
Edward Edward Charles Rawl. And my mother's name was Margaret Agnes Becker before she got married, yeah.
What did your dad do for work at that time?
Well, he was working for, they called it Ward's Baking, like Tantalk bread. It was on 37th Street in Lawrenceville. Yeah. He worked there. Plus, at night, he would wallpaper people's homes for them. I used to go and help him. He taught me how to wallpaper. Myself and my oldest sister, we were helping her clean. It was like a big double attic. So we were cleaning. That's where the boys all slept. So we were cleaning that. And a bird came in the window. Didn't come near me or my sister. And nobody believes this today, Jacob. But that bird only went by my mother. About an hour after we got the bird out of the house, she says, I don't feel good. I'm going downstairs. And I says, okay, Mom, I'll help you down. I went down. My sister stayed up and was finished cleaning. So a couple times I kept going and checking on her. And I told my sister Dolores, I said, oh, Mom's sleeping, you know. So after a while, she came down and she tried to wake my mother up. Well, here she had passed away. My mom died when I was 10 years old. She was 45, left 15 of us. My dad tried to raise us, but there was just, back in those days, they were strict about parents and their children and everything. So they felt my dad wasn't capable of raising us smaller children. So I ended up going to an orphanage. And
was Was there a cutoff on age as to which kids got to stay?
Yeah. That was. I was the oldest of the six. There's six of us went to the orphanage.
So like 10 and under.
Yeah.
Had to go to the
Yeah.
orphanage.
I was 10 when she passed away.
How did she pass away?
Cerebral hemorrhage, hon. Yeah.
From something in particular that occurred, or just out of the blue?
Well, she kept was sick with migraines, but the one doctor felt it was because of too many children, because she had the two sets of twins with almost like a year apart.
Yeah.
So she had 4 children, almost like in 2 years. And they just...
That is a lot of kids.
Yeah, well, that's what they said, you know. So 6 of us went to the orphanage, you know. The orphanage was the heartbreak, hun. Yeah. Leaving my dad, you know. And I said it was sad, you know, because we didn't know why we were being taken away, you know.
Did they physically come and take you away from him, or did he have to, like, drop you off somewhere?
Oh, no, they came with a car and put us in a car and took us, yeah.
Was he allowed to come and see you after you were
Oh,
gone?
yeah, every Sunday. He didn't come himself because I still had my brother Lawrencey, who was Down syndrome.
Yeah.
He was one of the twins. And my dad had to take care of him at home and the other boys that were younger, you know. So my sister and my one brother came every Sunday. He would send bags of fruit and candy, even money, yeah.
Why didn't they take Lawrence? Was he older than you?
No, Lawrence was one of the sets of twins. He was about 3.5 when my mom died. Yeah.
So they took everyone under 10. Why didn't they take him? Was it because he had Down syndrome?
My dad wouldn't let him.
Oh.
They wanted to put him into St. Anthony's for the retarded, because he was Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And my dad said, no, if you're taking my other 6, you're not taking him. He says, I'll raise him. So my dad kept him, yeah.
So he didn't keep the other twin.
He
but
wasn't
kept Lawrence.
allowed. He wasn't allowed to keep me, and yeah. Yeah, we had to go to the orphanage, yeah.
Do you know why he specifically fought to keep Lawrence? Was it just because of his ailments?
Well, they used to have this place called Mayview. Mm-hmm. It was more mentally ill people. And he worked there, and he's seen how they treated people. Back in those days, it was cruel how they treated people. Not like today, you know.
I'm sure many things back then would be considered cruel nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Well, in fact, as soon as somebody heard I was in an orphanage, oh, you must have lived a terrible life. They said, didn't they beat you and starve you? And I says, my God, no. I said, it was beautiful. I said, we had more to eat and more things to do than anything. I said, it was beautiful. I said, we had nuns and we had 2 priests. The oldest priest was in a wheelchair. His name was Father Gilbert. Then Father Cusick was his assistant. Then all the rest were nuns, and just like secretaries that would come and take care of the offices and that. But other than that, it was mainly the nuns that took care of us.
Really?
Yeah.
The nuns?
Yeah.
They weren't like the mean nuns that everyone said
Oh,
they
God.
beat you and everything?
Yeah, well, they said, didn't they beat you? I said, we had it so nice. I said, some people couldn't accept it because they were put in an orphanage. I said, but you accept something that you have better than what you had at home, you know. And they says, oh, we heard they're horrible in the orphanage. They starve you and everything. I said, we had change of clothes, we had food, 3 meals a day. Yeah, we went to school. We even had our own hospital. If you got sick, the nuns would take you over to the hospital. We had our own doctors and nurses, you know. That's what I said. And we had a beautiful school to go to, honey, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot different than, say, kids that went to a Catholic school.
Yeah.
They say the nuns would, like, smack you with rulers and stuff.
Yeah, well, they weren't allowed. That the head priest, the one in the wheelchair, if you want to punish him, find another way. But we used to have movies every Friday. We would go to this big hall and they'd show us movies. So a lot of times if you misbehaved or did something, you weren't allowed to go to the movies. But Jacob, they had the orphanage like it was the worst place in the world.
A lot of people think that, yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It was beautiful. I was only going on 11 or 12, and I worked in the office. The only thing, before you went to school in the morning, you had a chore to do, and you had to have your chore done by the time it was ready to go to school, you know. Yeah, so I cleaned this big hallway every day. I had to run this big sweeper, clean, even water the plants, you know. But I said the nuns in that were beautiful, hon. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely painted a different picture than...
It burned down, no. The orphanage burned down. I didn't even know it until one day I was going to Ted's house and see it was in Crafton Junction. You know where Crafton and Carnegie is?
Yeah.
Well, the orphanage was in Crafton Junction. Yeah.
So then, how many kids were in the orphanage, do you think? When you
Well, at that time, they said there was about 500 because that was the time of the war, hon.
500 kids?
Yeah.
How'd they fit 500 kids into one orphanage?
Oh, God.
Was it massive?
We had our room, my room would have been this whole first floor. Would
Your
be.
own personal room?
Yeah,
like
it was
sleep in?
all these rooms. No, we had beds lined up, honey.
Okay.
It was like 28 kids on a floor. We had, like they call it, a senior room, a junior room, and a baby's room. That you had to go by ages, you know, because I couldn't even go and be with my two little sisters, you know. So I was a senior, so I had to go on the third floor. And my sister Laverne was on the second floor, and Rita was on the first floor.
Jeez. What was the name of the orphanage?
St. Paul's.
It was just St. Paul's Orphanage.
Yeah.
What was the religious association? Was it Catholic?
Yeah. But we had children there that were different religions. I guess at that time they didn't have any too many orphanages out there at that time. So a lot of them came, you know, like Protestants came. We never had Jewish children, just like Protestants or, other religions. I had Sister Patricia. She was a music teacher. Sister Bernard was a little fat teacher, sister. Her name was Sister Bernard. She would come every morning. You had to kneel in front of her. She had a big white apron on. You had to kneel in front of her. She would fine comb your hair to make sure you didn't have lice in your hair every day. Then there was Sister Aurelia, Sister Constantine, Sister Cleophas.
Cleophas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting names.
Yeah, they were really weird names. When I worked in the office to help there was Sister Neri and Sister Naomi. They worked in the office with these other outside women that came, secretaries and that. But there was Mrs. Michael, Mrs. Buxton, and then there was this beautiful woman, honest to God, Jacob. She was so beautiful, but she only had one finger, no arms, just one finger. And she could brush her hair with that finger. She'd straighten up her stockings, everything. She was, her name was Alice McNaughton. She was beautiful. Yeah, she came every day. In fact, she rode a bus every day to come to help the nuns. Yeah, but she was born with just a finger. The day, honey, I was getting ready to come home from the orphanage, they asked me if I would rather go to these foster people, wanted me to go to their home. They wanted to foster me. And they said, you have a choice between going with your dad or go with these foster people who will give you everything you ever wanted. They're very wealthy. And I says, no. I says, I want to go home to my dad. And they said, well, why don't you think about it before you leave the orphanage? And I says, no. I says, I'm going home to my dad. I said, my brother needs me. So I came home and I helped take care of the house. Then I went to school and graduated. And I says I couldn't do nothing else but take care of them. So then after I graduated, I get this phone call from this Mrs. Buxton. And she said, Margaret, she says, we have a surprise for you. When you come on Sunday, we have a good surprise for you. So she said, you be excited when you get there. Here, they had
It was me.
They had the five kids with little suitcases. And I looked, I said, what are they doing? And this Mrs. Buxton said, they're going home with you. You're taking them home.
All your brothers and sisters?
Yeah. Yeah. So they'd come home. So I had to take care of them and Lawrence.
And where was your dad during all this?
My dad was still working. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And he was, where did you say he was working? What was he doing?
Then I stayed there till I got married, And then my other sister, she took over,
One of the younger ones?
Yeah. Ted came in one day and took me to see the orphanage, but it was already had burned down. But he wanted me to just have last remembrance of it. So he said, Mom, let me just take you. But to go down into the orphanage, you had to go down into a hill. It was down into this gully, that's how big it was. And at the bottom of the hill, Jake, was this big cross with the statues beside it and Jesus on the cross. You've seen it all over the place. That's how big it was. So Ted says, Mom, let me take you down just once. I says, okay. I said, we'll go. But as soon as he parked on top of the hill, I just got antsy inside. I got real sick inside. So we drove down, but it was all an empty lot. But where the boys' building used to be they made it into a monastery, and it was for boys becoming priests, Okay. Yeah. So we drove down, and I got out, and I kissed the cross, and there was this guy working there, and I said, do you mind if we look around? I said, I was practically born and raised here. He said, you go do whatever you want. Well, I saw these boys running into this building, and they said, oh, they're all becoming priests. I said, oh, God. But it was one big open space. It was unreal.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was the weirdest feeling to see it, hon. Mm-hmm.
Whenever you were a kid, what did you want to be whenever you grew up? Obviously, it's changed now. But what did you want to be whenever you grew up?
Well, I really was thinking about being a nun.
Really?
Yeah.
You thought about being a nun?
Yeah. But then after I went home and I seen the situations and everything sort of left me. I just felt like I'd like to get married and have children.
What do you remember about high school back in 45?
Oh, it was an all-girls school.
What was the name of the school?
St. Augustine's in Lawrenceville on 37th Street.
Was it to the point all girls as not even male teachers?
No, all nuns, yeah.
Oh, it was also nuns?
Yeah.
So it was Catholic as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like in there?
Oh, beautiful, hon,
They
yeah.
weren't mean?
No. That's what I said when people.
That's some nice nuns.
When people kept asking me about the orphanage and these nuns, I said, I don't know why people don't give these nuns credit what they're due them. I said they work hard, and a couple times while I was in the orphanage, I had gotten sick. So this sister Joachim, she come out of her, they call it a cell, their bedroom's called a cell. She come out of her cell and she said, Margaret, what's wrong? And I says, I just don't feel good, sister. I said, I feel nauseated and sick. She sat by my bed the whole night. So she gave me some medicine. She called over and got medicine from the hospital. And the next morning, she checked me again. She said, "Do you want to go over to the hospital or do you just want to stay here?" So I stayed there, and she took care of me the whole day, honey. Yeah. But they were so good. There wasn't one nun that really was mean. And they could be because the boys gave them so much trouble. Well, I lived a couple different places. A lot of places I lived, I didn't think they were good enough for me to raise my children. So I would actually move out of the area till I find a good place to raise my children.
Okay.
And that's where we ended up in Aspinwall. Yeah.
Did you like the schooling there, or?
Yeah, the school district, the environment, everything, honey.
Okay.
It was a real big house, honey. Yeah. It was in Aspinwall, so you figure.
Remember the address of the house?
Yeah, yeah. 172, hon. Yeah.
172?
Second Street.
Second Street. Do you remember what year the house was built?
Yeah. Oh, it was 100 years old.
When you moved in. So like 1850s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Good bones?
Had 3 floors, hon. Yeah.
And a basement?
Yeah. 2 baths, yeah.
4 floors.
The guy that bought it made 3 apartments out of it. That's how big it was, Jake.
Wow.
My first husband, I was 22.
You're 22 years?
Yeah, I was married 25 years to him. Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
That's quite a long time.
Yeah.
How many kids did you have with him?
9, yeah,
9 kids with him.
yeah.
Can you tell me about your first husband?
What, honey?
Can you tell me about your first husband?
He was an alcoholic, hon.
It's quite the way to start.
Didn't want to work. Didn't, do nothing. Yeah.
Did you know that from the beginning, or did you learn?
No,
after?
yeah. Yeah. I thought once, we got married that he'd stop drinking and we'd have a good life. But he kept quitting job after job, and he just wouldn't give up the liquor, hon, yeah. And half the time he didn't even come home, That's why I said, everybody says, "You had 9 kids to him?"
It's a lot of kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Like 3 to 4 times the normal number now.
Yeah, that's it, hon, yeah. But yeah, he just, and when he was drinking, he was mean, nasty to the kids, So after 26 years, I just felt I had enough. I says, if I'm good, because I started to go to work then because he wasn't bringing nothing into the house. So I ended up going to work myself. So I started cleaning houses, And that's why I says, I used to walk all those hills in Aspinwall to go to work. And everybody said, "You walked Center Avenue," because that's the steepest hill going up to the top, I said, "Yeah." There was 3 houses. I worked for a doctor. I worked for his sister. Her husband was an attorney. I worked for these gay guys.
Ain't nothing wrong. They can just go do their thing.
Yeah.
Doesn't involve us.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Of course, back then, I assumed that they didn't want anyone to know anything
Oh,
about that.
no. I don't even know why I went and cleaned. Jacob, the place was meticulous. It was unreal. But they treated me like I was a gold mine. Yeah.
Maybe they just really liked you.
Yeah.
What year did you realize all those changes started to happen with your husband? Was it immediately after the marriage that you were like, this guy's an alcoholic? Or did he, slowly?
It just gradually, honey. It just got to the point. I was a nervous wreck all the time, I didn't know how he was going to come home, how he's going to treat the kids when he's drunk, And,
Yeah.
But everybody says, you should have got rid of him sooner than that, And, as soon as my girls became teenagers and were able, every one of them went to work. Worked at, yeah, restaurants, wherever they could. And a lot of times I'd be figuring out my bills for the month, and my Peggy should say, "How are things, Mom?" And I said, "Well, I'm sort of a couple of dollars short." I said, "But I'll figure it out." She'd go and take her tip money and lay it on the table. She said, "Here, Mom, use whatever you want." Yeah. And that's how we survived, because each one of them, every once in a while, would donate their tips towards the bills. So we'd have the gas and light paid, honey, you know. He ruined how many Christmases? It was unbelievable, you know.
Your kids remember all this?
He went, yeah.
They do.
He went and the one time and got a Christmas tree. Well, he was drunk when he went, and he brought it home. It was so bent out of shape and everything. So we're putting the tree up, and it looked horrible. And I said to the kids, I don't know how I'm going to fix this. So he come in the room, and my youngest one, he said, well, Dad, you blew it sky high. He took that tree and all my beautiful ornaments, picked the tree up, threw it up against the wall, broke every ornament, broke the tree in half, everything, Jake. Because when he passed away with cancer too. He died at my oldest son's home. And he said, I did a lot of mistakes in my life. He said, my first big mistake was your mother. He said, because your mother was good to me. And he says, and I didn't appreciate what your mother had done for me. And I says, well, I did what a husband and wife should have done. I tried to stick by him because I knew he didn't have a good life upbringing either. His mother and father were separated, and I think she left him when he was 5. So he didn't have a good lifestyle either, you know. So I said I was just trying to give him something that he didn't have, you know. But I says, now, when he's dying, he's telling my son he should have stuck by me and been a better man, you know. I said 26 years it took him, and he still wasn't going to be a better man.
How did you get out of that marriage? Did you just leave one day?
What, honey?
How did you get out of that marriage? Did you just leave?
Well, I came home from work the one day, and the kids were all in school. They were in high school. And I come home, and he's sitting in the kitchen having coffee, and all the breakfast dishes and everything were in the sink. He could have swept the floor and cleaned it. So I come in, and I says, how come you didn't wash the dishes? He said, what do you think I have kids for? I said, we didn't bring my kids into this world to do our work. I said, you're not working. I said, you're just sitting here doing nothing. There's no harm in you cleaning up the kitchen. And he said, well, I don't feel like it. And he said, it'll get done when I feel like doing. He said, or let them do it, you know. I said, enough's enough. I had enough with you. And I guess I must have had a bad day, Jacob, because I said to him, I want you out of here. I want you out now. And he said, I don't have no money. Where am I going? Well, here I had celebrated my 25th anniversary with him. Well, those guys I work for, the gay guys, they gave me a box for my anniversary. Had 50 silver dollars in it. So I said to my daughter, Peggy, go upstairs, get that box on my dresser. She brought it down. I said, you don't have no money? I said, yes, you do. I took the box, threw it up in the air. 50 silver dollars went everywhere, Jake. Jake, he picked every one up, put them in the box, put his coat on, walked out the door.
You never saw him again?
Well, he kept wanting to come back, and I said, no. I said, you're not coming back. And when the kids come home from school that day, I said to my one boy, I said, Wally, your dad doesn't live here no more. Guess what he said? Thank God you're out of your cage. My husband come home one time with his brother-in-law. They were out drinking together. My children were already in bed. And I think Beverly was a teenager at the time when this happened. So he came, and I said to him, what's he doing there? Why ain't he home with his wife? And he says, well, she threw him out. I said, well, he's not staying here. And he said, just tonight, he'll leave tomorrow morning. And I said, well, he can sleep on the couch. I said, that's as far as it's going, but he's leaving tomorrow morning. So I go to bed, and Beverly always liked to have a drink of water during the night. So she went down to the kitchen to get some water. He's walking around the kitchen in his underwear. She come running up the step. Mom, that man down there's walking around with no clothes on. I get up, I go down. I said, Tony, what are you doing? I said, where's your clothes? Well, I can't sleep in my clothes. I said, well, you can't sleep like that in my home. I said, get your clothes on and get out of my home right now. She was terrified. For weeks, I had to sleep with her because she was terrified that this guy was still down in the kitchen. And I told him, I said, don't come back here. You're done. I said, I don't want you in my home. I said, you're nothing but a drunken slob. They had 2 children. The boy, three children. The oldest boy, his name was Joe. He was in the service, honey. He used to come to the house because his mother and dad, all they did was drink all day long. Jacob, I went to their apartment one time because their dad's mother lived on the first floor with her second husband. And this Tony's wife, they lived on the second floor, and they had 3 children. Well, this Joe, he was like a teenager. He would come to see my kids because he loved them, and they all got along. And I treated him like he was one of my children, you know. Well, he ended up going to the service, and while he was in the service, he kept writing to me, and I write back. And I'd ask him how his family was. I don't hear from nobody, Aunt Marg. Nobody calls me or nothing. Well, he finally ends up in Japan and finds this girl and marries her. He brings her back to Pittsburgh. But before that, honey, before he brought her back, he used to come to the house every weekend when he was on a furlough. And he said to me one time, he said, you know, Aunt Marg, I wish I could live with you. And I said, Joe, what's wrong with your mom and dad? He said, they're drunk from morning till night. I said, well, Joe, honey, I says, you can't come here and live. I says, I have too many children to take care of. So he said, well, can I come every once in a while just to see you? I said, yeah, anytime you want to. He said, I love talking to you. I said, well, I love talking to you too. He goes back to Japan. He sends me this card, Jacob. It was a basket, had apples in it, saying how much he loved me and everything. He wished that I was his mother. And every month after that, a little card came with an apple in it, telling me how much he loved me, and he wished that I could have been his mother. Then he sends me this other card. Oh, Aunt Marg, I met this Japanese girl, and he says, I'm going to get married. I said, well, when you come to Pittsburgh, bring her to see me. He said, her name's Amiko, and he says, I'd love to bring her. Would you accept her? I said, why not? I said, bring her. You know, she came to Pittsburgh. They had a little girl. They named it Peggy after my Peggy. And they were together for a couple years. But I guess his mother and dad drinking, they lived there with them because they couldn't afford any place because he was in the service, honey. Next thing you know, Amiko goes back to Japan and divorces Joe. He was so devastated. He ended up having a heart attack. He was 35 years old and died. But before he died, he told everybody, my mother lives in Aspinwall.
Was there a specific moment that changed your life significantly that you can remember? full-on turn of the page?
I think when I met Don, when I met your grandpa, he was an different man, very gentle, very kind, and he accepted the fact that I was taking care of my Down syndrome brother and all my kids, and it seemed like he had so much respect for me, But he was just an altogether different man, honey. Yeah, just very kind, I loafed with his mother. That's how I met your grandpa, through her, because she lost her husband and she was alone. So she asked her son one time, why don't you ask Peggy if she wants to go out somewhere? She says, I'm going to go to this club. Maybe Peggy would like to go. And I says, oh, Perry, I says, I can't go out. I says, I don't buy clothes. I don't have fancy stuff to go out and that. He says, but you don't have to dress real fancy. It's just the club. They dance and everything. And I said, well, I don't think so, Well, then he went and told his wife, my daughter, and she said, Mom, go, get out of the house. You got to get out of the house. All these years you've been stuck in the house. I said, no. I said, I don't want to go out. I said, I don't want to meet nobody. I go to work. 2 days later, I come home from work. There's new dresses, shoes, all kind of new clothes. And I said, whose things are there? Beverly said, they're yours. You're going out tonight. I said, oh, no, I'm not. They said, oh, yes, you are. If we have to dress you, you're going out. So then I start going down this club, the RE Club in Sharpsburg, with this Irene, Perry's mother. And we went every Friday. And I guess it was about a year that I was going down there with her. Then one night, I was sitting by myself and she was dancing, and all these guys, they kept coming up and wanting to dance, So I would dance a little bit with them, And then they try to tell me their history, When,
That's exactly what you want to know right there.
Yeah. You're a married man and you're going with me, And so then one time I was sitting like there. It was like an upper level. I was sitting by myself, and your grandpap came in, and he looked up at me and motioned he wanted to dance. So I says, oh, well, Irene, she says, Peggy, go dance with him. And I says, oh, okay. So I start dancing with him. So he wouldn't leave me alone all night, the whole night. And Irene usually took me home. And she was a smarty. She says, oh, Peg, I'm going home tonight with John. Maybe your new friend will take you home. So it was right up the road from, Sharpsburg to Aspinwall. So I says, well, okay. But he was really nice in the car. He asked me about my children and everything. And that's when I was going through the divorce with my ex.
You met him before you were fully divorced?
Yeah. Oh. But we only went out a couple times. And I told him, I says, I don't like getting a divorce. I never thought I'd ever get a divorce. But I think your grandpap was already divorced from your grandma.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah. But, so as soon as he found out I got a divorce, he said, well, would you mind going out, every once in a while? So that we start going out.
Yeah. Did he have good dance moves?
Oh, yeah.
He's a good dancer?
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember what music you were dancing to back then?
Oh, well, they had Friday, they'd have regular dance band. Saturday was a regular dance, but you couldn't get in the club unless you were dressed. Men could not go in with jeans or just an old shirt or nothing. You had to be dressed to go in this club. So he always looked handsome when he come.
What was your first actual date with my grandfather like? Not at the dance house, but did he take you out to dinner somewhere? Did he take you somewhere to just talk with you?
Yeah, we used to go to this place called the Landmark. It was up in Cheswick, honey.
Okay.
Yeah, he'd take me to dinner up there. Yeah.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah,
Was
it
it
was
expensive?
nice, comfortable. No, really, it wasn't. Yeah,
What was my grandfather like whenever you first met him? What do you remember specifically that stuck out to you? Like this guy's.
that he was quite a gentleman. He really was. He was really no nothing mean came out of, and he was so proud of his children. You know, he talked about his children. I talked about mine, and he was saying how much he loved his children and that there wasn't anything he wouldn't do for those children. Yeah.
At that point, did he have any kids that were under 18?
Yeah, your mom.
She was the only one?
I don't know how old Eric was, but your mom was the youngest. Yeah.
So she was the only one that was still like living at
Yeah.
home?
Yeah.
Okay. And he was perfectly okay that you had 9 kids?
Yeah.
Then that he had, was that 7?
So, yeah.
7 kids?
Yeah.
He saw no issues with that?
No.
And you said
And
you brought-
he knew I had my brother who was Down syndrome, you know. Because when my dad died, I raised my brother, you know. Yeah. He was 65 when he died.
Which is crazy.
He died a year before Grandpa. Yeah. But your Grandpa took care of him so I could still go to work. He didn't want me to work because I didn't need to, but I just felt I couldn't give some of those people up, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when did he ask you to marry him?
Oh. We were at the club one night, and well, he found out that I finally got my divorce, you know, and so we were at the club. So he's talking to all these friends of ours that we had met, and invited them to come to the house. And I said, well, it's late, Dawn. I'm sure they all want to go home. He says, oh, well, they can go home after we have some drinks at the house. So we come back to the house, and they're all sitting in there, and I went and got each a beer or that. And I come in, and he says, I have something for you. And he handed me my ring. He said, would you marry me? And everybody, they're clapping, and we had such a good time. I said, are you kidding? He said, no. He says, I want to get married. He said, do you want to marry me? And I said, well, I guess so. Yeah.
What was your wedding like?
It was beautiful, hon. Yeah. I have a picture somewhere. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Where did you get married?
What, honey?
Where did you get married?
We at an Italian church up in Bloomfield, honey.
Italian church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember anything that was special about that wedding day, other than getting married, of course?
No, it was beautiful, and everybody seemed to have it. We had our reception there at the church, and everybody had a good time. Yeah, we got to know each other, you know.
Yeah. Do you happen to remember what your first dance song was with my grandfather?
Well, the first song we ever heard that we both like, he was driving me up to my home in Aspinwall. It's called Baby Come to Me. Yeah, that was the name of the, I can't think of the girl's name. But yeah, it was really nice, and he loved it and I loved it. So every time we went out, he would play that. Yeah, it was called Baby Come to Me. Yeah.
And you also danced to that at your wedding?
Yeah.
Towards the end of his passing, what do you remember most about my grandfather?
Well, he was very ill, hon. You know, he had the cancer real bad. He had cancer for 10 years, hon. So he was 90% of our marriage was taking him back and forth for chemo and stuff, honey. But he wasn't hard to deal with. In fact, when he had his last chemo, and the doctor said that they could no longer do anything for your grandpap, they wanted to put him in a nursing home. And I says, no. I says, I don't think so. And this Dr. Zyder, he said, well, he'll be pretty difficult to work with because it's a matter of time. I said, well, then his time will have to spend it at home. And he said, well, if that's what you want. So he looked at your grandpap and he said, well, what do you want? And he says, whatever she says goes. And he said, are you sure you want to take care of me? He says, I'm a burden to you. I said, well, we'll be a burden to each other. And the year before that, I was taking care of him and Lawrencey, both of them, you know. So he said, well, you just got over taking care of Lawrencey. Why do you want to do this? I'm a burden now. I said, we'll worry about it after you get home. So he was so surprised that I wanted him here, you know. But I had nurses come 3 times a day to help. But by the time they came, Jacob, I had everything done. And they would laugh. They said, why should we come here? They said, you do everything that we're supposed to be doing. I said, I'm sorry. I says, I just have to take care of him, that's all.
You just wanted him to be comfortable with everything that was going on. Because I remember he was right over here in
Yeah,
this room.
yeah.
That's where he...
Yeah, I made everything in there for him so he could watch a TV, honey. And even the day before he passed, it was, Christmas Eve. I decorated the whole house. I decorated the tree outside so that he could see Christmas before anything would happen. But I didn't know he was going to pass that way, that fast, But I'll tell you, honey, he was such a good patient. He didn't complain. He was on like 500 milligrams of morphine a day.
Wow.
And that wasn't even enough. And I used to get him up and put him in a chair. He'd want to sit up in the chair. And the one day he says, oh, Peggy, my backside hurts so bad. And so I told the nurse. So they brought him, they call it a donut to sit on.
Yeah.
So the first night he sat on it, oh my God, Peggy, please take it out. He said it hurt so bad. And I said, well, we'll have to figure something out. I said, you can't be sitting and suffering like that. So the next morning I got up and I had an egg crate put on the bed when he was able to sleep in the bed. So I'm making the bed. And I thought, well, I don't need this egg crate. So I took the egg crate off and I had it laying on the floor. And I thought, well, why should I throw it away? I'll figure out something for it. So I come in and he wanted to sit up again. So I got a pillow and let him sit on a pillow, but he was still in a lot of pain. So I measured the chair. So I went in and I cut a square out to match the chair. So I said, I want you to sit on this and tell me where it hurts. So he sat on it and he said, well, it's comfortable. He said, the pain ain't as bad. I said, but tell me where it hurts. So he showed me where it hurt. So I took it back in the room. I cut that right out. So I took it to Jake and I put him back in the chair. He sat in that every day. He says, Peg, I don't know what you did. He said, but it is so comfortable. And the nurses, they were shocked because I handed them the donut back. And they said, well, what's he sitting on? And when I told them, they said, you're too much, And then he started, his back started, Jake. I guess the cancer was traveling all through his body. So he said his back hurt, So I said, well, I went and got the egg crate was left, and I made him a back seat for that, Jake. And I did the same thing, Jake. I took, and where his back was hurting, I cut the egg crate out. And he had a whole new chair. And they laughed. Every time they come, they said, what next, Peggy?
What do you remember about his funeral service?
Oh, well, Aunt Linda, I think, got mad at me, honey, because before he passed away, the one day we were sitting talking, and I think he knew his time was coming. So he said, Peggy, what can I do for you? He said, can I do something special for you because you've done so much for me? And I said, I really didn't do anything that was made for me to do for you. And he said, well, is there something that you'd like from me? And I said, well, the only thing I would like, I said, you're going to be cremated. I said, you want your ashes thrown over Allegheny Forest. And I says, I would prefer if I had your ashes put in my grave. And he said, well, if that's what you want, that's what you can do. He said, I've got to do something special for you. I said, well, that's special. So the day of the funeral, before the funeral, I took the kids, your mom and everybody, we went and had made the arrangements. And when I said that he was going to be cremated and his ashes were going to be put in my grave, Linda got mad at me. Well, that's not what he wanted. He wanted his ashes float over the forest. And I said, well, that's illegal. I said, you're not allowed to do that. And she said, well, that's what he wanted. And then your Uncle Paul, said, Linda, whatever Dad told Peggy goes. He said, we have nothing to say. He said, if that's what she wants, that's what's going to happen.
What do you think makes your family unique? What's unique about you and your clan of children that you have created?
You mean like their stability, how far as they got in life, honey?
Yeah, it could be anything that you see as how your family was different than every other family.
Well, when I lived in Aspinwall, honey, when my children went to school, I always tried to find jobs that I would leave the house when they left the house, but I had to be back home before they got home so I could start dinner and that. So to make life a little happier for the girls, the boys would go out and play balls and stuff and that, honey. And the girls, I gave them little chores to do. But a lot of times before dinner time would come, I would move my dining room table, put some music on, and I taught my girls how to dance. And every day after school, we'd have our dance party before dinner. My children ate every day at 5 o'clock. Even though their father did come home half the time, I didn't make them wait for him to come home. I fed them every day at 5 o'clock. And but we enjoyed it. The boys would go out and play ball or that, especially where I could see them, And but we just did a lot of things together until they all got married. Before that, we had a happy life together. We celebrated the holidays with my oldest sister and her family. We went on trips in the summertime. We had a real good, close relationship till they hit their 20s and that, and they were moving on.
What are you most grateful for?
Of the good health God had given me, hon.
You're doing pretty good.
Yeah. I've been in pretty good health for 91 years and others, than arthritis and stuff. But I think God just gave me good health to carry on, and I've very seldom ever got sick raising my children. Even when they had measles and chicken pox or stuff, it never seems to affect me, Seemed like my health was good enough to take care of them.
What would you say is the best part and worst part about getting older?
I just think the way your body, can't function like it normally did, honey. And things that you mentally think you could do, you no longer do. And it sort of upsets your whole system of life because you like to do painting and stuff. You can't do that because the body's shutting itself down, honey. And I said, today, I look around here, I should be doing this and doing that. And I said, you can't. I said, because the body doesn't function that way anymore.
What do you say the best part about getting older is?
What, honey?
What do you think is the best part about getting older?
Uh, I think just sitting and watching the new children that are coming into the world and enjoying just watching how they're growing up and things, just the whole new generation thing. I think now that I'm older, I see how the generations are different than when I grew up. And I said, some of the things I don't like that are being done, but others, I said, I appreciate that God gave me this life yet.
What's the best advice you have ever received from somebody, and who gave it to you?
I think from the nun in the hospital, in the orphanage, honey. She always told me, start with you first. Think what you want to do with your life after you leave the orphanage, and sit down and think, am I going to be a good person or a bad person, or if I'm going to love people or hate people? She said, start with yourself. Think how you want to survive your life, And that's what I said. I was telling my one daughter the other day, I said, Bev, I always felt when I come out of the orphanage, I was either going to stay home and help my dad or go to school and try to get an education, I said, the more I thought about it, my dad needed me, but I wanted an education, So I said, I chose both of them. I figured I still can stay home and help my dad and still go to school. So I said, that's what I did. I said, but I always made up my mind. I wanted to be the best mother a child could have.
What do you wish that you could have told your younger self today? Could be at any point in your younger life, but now that you know, after 91 years.
Well, I think the best thing to would be, Jacob, is to start with yourself first. See what you want to do with your life. Don't just sit back and say, well, tomorrow I'll do this or do it. Make sure you know what you're doing and better yourself. Don't look for somebody else to better your life for you. You start with yourself and better yourself. Then you can start with other people if you want to help somebody. Be there for them, only in a kind way, so that they're not depending on you for the rest of their life. Just give them some encouragement to try to be happy and make other people happy. Don't live with this anger in your heart.
Do you have any regrets up to this day about anything that has occurred in your life?
Well, the only real regret, hon, is I really felt I didn't give my children a better life. I wish things would have been different with their father. Because I think my boys missed the father's relationship. And that's the only real regret, is he didn't spend time with his children, or with me, I think our marriage relationship wasn't good enough, honey.
What is the secret to living a long life? You've done 91 years. What do you think has made you go this long?
Be stubborn.
Being stubborn.
Being stubborn and making up my mind that I was going to survive and do things differently than how I grew up and try to better my life. And actually live my life to its fullest, hon. till the day it comes that I'm no longer here, you know, and make as many people happy as I can while I'm here. Yeah, that's my life, honey.